parked the car and walked up to the door, I could hear laughter from inside. The sound of my kids' giggles was comforting at first, but as I opened the door, I froze. My wife was standing in the living room with our two kids and a man I didn't recognize. She was smiling as she said, "Kids, this is your real father. We're going on a trip with him." The joy on their faces quickly disappeared when they noticed me standing in the doorway. My briefcase dropped from my hand, the sound reverberating through the room like a thunderclap. I stepped inside, my gaze locked on the scene before me. My wife's smile faltered when our eyes met. The kids were frozen, their little faces a mix of confusion and guilt. And the man, he just stood there, shameless and defiant, as if daring me to react. "Real father?" I asked, my voice low but sharp enough to slice through the tension in the room. "Care to explain, darling?" She stammered, her confidence wavering. I didn't expect you back so soon." "That's obvious," I replied, the sarcasm dripping from my tone. "But go on, enlighten me. Who's this gentleman?" The man, unfazed, stepped forward with an arrogant smirk. "I'm Alex," he said. "And yes, I'm the real father of your kids. She and I have been together for years now. Didn't you notice?" Years. The word hit me like a sledgehammer. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, had been carrying on this betrayal right under my nose. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure in front of my children. "What trip?" I asked, ignoring Alex and focusing on her. My wife hesitated, avoiding my eyes. We were planning to leave tonight," she finally admitted. "The kids and I, with him." My youngest, still clutching a stuffed toy I had brought home from my last trip, whimpered, "Dad, are you mad at us?" My heart broke at the sight of their innocent faces. This wasn't their fault. They didn't deserve to be caught in this mess. I knelt down, looking my kids in the eyes. "I'm not mad at you," I said softly, "but there are things you don't understand right now. Go upstairs, okay? Pack your favorite things. I'll come get you soon." They nodded hesitantly, glancing back at their mother as they climbed the stairs. Once they were out of earshot, I stood up, the calmness in my voice replaced by a simmering rage. "So this was your plan?" I said, looking directly at her. "Steal my kids, abandon our life, and run off with him? Did you think I'd just let that happen?" Her face turned pale, and Alex scoffed. "Let's not make this dramatic," he said smugly. "She chose me. It's over. Accept it." I took a deep breath, letting his words hang in the air before replying. "You're right. It is over." I walked to the kitchen counter, picked up my phone, and dialed a number. "Who are you calling?" my wife asked nervously. "Just tying up loose ends," I said, flashing her a cold smile. As I ended the call, I noticed my wife fidgeting, her confidence unraveling with every second of silence. Alex, on the other hand, remained smug, as if he thought he had already won. "You know," I began, pacing slowly, "I always suspected something was off. The late-night girls' nights out, the sudden interest in fitness, and the secrecy with your phone. But I ignored it because I trusted you. Big mistake." Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say a word. Alex leaned against the couch, crossing his arms like he was enjoying the show. "You've been planning this for a while, haven't you?" I asked her. "Emptying accounts, hiding documents. You thought I wouldn't notice?" Her face turned ghostly pale. How do you know about that?" I smirked. "Did you forget I handle all the finances? Every cent you spent on hotels, dinners, and gifts is documented. And those business receipts I trusted you to file? Let's just say the numbers didn't add up." Alex finally looked uneasy. "Wait, you been watching her? That's creepy, man." I turned to him, my voice icy. "Not as creepy as a grown man playing daddy with another man's kids while their actual father is working his ass off for them." The room went silent, and the tension was suffocating. Then I dropped the bomb. "Here's the twist," I said, locking eyes with my wife. "You're not just cheating. You're also pregnant." Her jaw dropped, and Alex froze. And here's the real kicker, I continued, my voice razor sharp. You told me it's mine, but now I can't help but wonder. Alex, want to take a guess? Alex's face turned beet red, and he glanced at her, his earlier confidence shattered. Wait! You didn't tell me you were pregnant. She's 2 months along, I added, savoring the chaos. Didn't think I knew, did you? I've already booked a DNA test for the baby. And when the results come back, things are going to get even more interesting. My wife looked like she was about to faint, and Alex's cocky smirk had completely disappeared. You've both made a mockery of my family, I said, my voice low but deadly serious. But trust me, tonight is just the beginning of what's coming. As the weight of my words settled, the room seemed to shrink. My wife slumped onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted it to end like this, she whispered. End like this? I repeated bitterly. You plan to walk out with my kids and your lover, erase me from their lives, and leave me behind like I never mattered. How else could it have ended? She buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. Alex, meanwhile, stood there frozen, his bravado long gone. For a moment, the room was silent, except for her crying. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the woman I fell in love with, but a stranger who had destroyed everything we built. Do you even realize what you've done to the kids? I asked, my voice breaking. They trusted you, I trusted you, and now you've turned our family into this. Her sobs grew louder, but I pressed on. Do you know what my youngest said to me last week? She told me she wanted to be an artist when she grows up, and she asked if I'd hang her paintings in my office. She said, Dad, will you always be proud of me? My voice cracked, and I had to pause to collect myself. She adores you, I continued, my eyes burning. But you were going to rip her away from me. What do you think that would have done to her? To both of them? My wife looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. I didn't think— No, you didn't, I interrupted, my voice trembling with anger and sadness. You didn't think about anyone but yourself, and now I have to pick up the pieces of the life you shattered. Alex, looking increasingly uncomfortable, muttered, Maybe I should go. I laughed bitterly. Oh, you're not going anywhere. You wanted to play house? You wanted to be the real father? Then stand here and face the consequences of what you've done. Turning back to my wife, I softened my tone, though my words remained sharp. Do you remember our wedding vows? You promised to stand by me in sickness and in health, for better or worse. I believed you. I built my life around you, around us. And now, here I am, watching it all crumble. She tried to speak, but I held up a hand. Number, I'm done listening to excuses. Tonight, you've not only lost my love, you've lost my respect, my trust, and any future we could have had. I walked over to the staircase and called the kids back down. Their small footsteps echoed as they came down, their faces still full of worry. I knelt down, looking at them with every ounce of love I could muster. I need you to listen carefully, I said gently. No matter what happens, I'll always be your dad. Nothing will ever change that. You're my everything, and I'll never stop fighting for you. My youngest hugged me tightly, her tears soaking into my shirt. Don't be sad, Dad, she whispered. We'll stay with you, won't we? I couldn't answer her, my throat too tight with emotion. As I stood up, I looked at my wife one last time. You've made your choice, I said quietly, but you're not taking them from me. Not now, not ever. The evening had started with betrayal, but now it ended with a quiet resolve. I had lost the woman I once loved, but I wasn't going to lose my children. And as I watched my wife crumble under the weight of her actions, I realized something. Karma wouldn't just come for her. It already had. As my words echoed in the room, the reality of what she'd done seemed to hit her like a tidal wave. My wife collapsed onto the couch, her hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Hurt me? I repeated, my voice hollow. You weren't just hurting me. You were destroying our family, stealing my children, and erasing me from their lives. And for what? For him? I gestured toward Alex, who now stood silent, his earlier confidence replaced with a nervous tension. She shook her head, sobbing harder. I thought I loved him. But now. But now you're caught, I said coldly, and you're realizing the cost of your selfishness. Don't confuse regret with remorse. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, I saw flashes of our life together. The days we laughed until our stomachs hurt, the nights we stayed up planning our future, and the mornings I woke up to see her smiling beside me. It all felt like a cruel illusion now, shattered beyond repair. You've destroyed more than just our marriage, I continued, my voice shaking with emotion. You've destroyed the safe world our kids lived in. Do you even realize what you've done to them? Her sobs grew louder as my words pierced through. I turned to Alex, who was inching toward the door. Don't you dare move, I said, my voice sharp. You think you can just walk out of this mess you helped create? He froze, his face pale. Look, man, I didn't know it would turn out like this. She told me you two were over. I cut him off with a bitter laugh. Over? While we were still sleeping in the same bed? While I was working late nights to pay for the life she wanted? Tell me, Alex, when did you think it was over? Before or after you decided to play house with my family? His mouth opened, but no words came out. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned back to my wife, my tone softening, but still heavy with sorrow. Do you remember when our youngest was born? You held her in your arms and told me she was the best thing that ever happened to us. I believed you. I built a life around you and our family. And now, you've thrown it all away. For him. She looked at me, her tear-streaked face full of desperation. I made a mistake, she whispered. I know I did. Please, don't take the kids away from me. I let out a shaky breath, the pain in her plea almost unbearable. You made your choice, I said quietly. You put yourself first. Now I have to put them first. They deserve stability, not a mother who treats their lives like a game of chess. At that moment, the kids came back downstairs, their little faces anxious and confused. My youngest clutched her stuffed animal tightly as she looked up at me. Daddy, are you okay? I knelt down, forcing a smile despite the lump in my throat. I'm okay, sweetheart. And no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you and your brother. That's a promise. She threw her arms around my neck, and I held her tightly, feeling her small frame shake with silent tears. My older child stood nearby, his face a mixture of anger and sadness. Why is Mom crying? He asked softly. I looked at him, my heart breaking all over again. Because sometimes adults make mistakes, I said gently. Big ones. But I promise you, we'll get through this. Together. As I stood, I looked at my wife one last time. Her face was etched with regret, but it was too late. I hope you think about what you've done every day, I said quietly. Not for my sake, but for theirs. Without another word, I guided the kids to the door. They didn't ask where we were going, and I didn't tell them. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house another second. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror at my children, their innocent faces pressed against the car windows. The weight of their trust was heavy, but it was a weight I was willing to carry. In that moment, I realized that karma had already started its work. My wife was left behind with the emptiness she had created, and I was walking away with the only thing that truly mattered: my kids. The house was silent when I returned 2 days later. My wife hadn't expected me back after I'd taken the kids, but I wasn't there to talk. I was there to set things straight. She was sitting at the dining table, her eyes puffy from crying. Alex was nowhere in sight, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, and the audacity to call another man the real father of my children. I wasn't expecting you, she said softly, her voice trembling. No, I'm sure you weren't, I replied, placing a thick envelope on the table in front of her. She looked at it, confused. What's this? Divorce papers, I said flatly. I've already filed. And before you ask, yes, I'm going for full custody of the kids. Her eyes widened, panic setting in. No, you can't do that. They need me. They needed you to be honest. They needed you to be loyal. But you made your choice, and now they need stability. That's something you can't give them anymore, I said firmly. Her hands shook as she reached for the envelope, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out a second set of documents and placed them beside the first. These are the financial records I've compiled over the past few months, I continued. Every dollar you siphoned out of our accounts, every hotel stay, every dinner with him. The court will find it very interesting. Her face turned pale. You've been keeping track of me? I trusted you once. That was my mistake, I said coldly. But the moment you betrayed me, I made sure I wouldn't be the one left with nothing. Everything is documented. You won't get a cent more than what the law allows. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't stop. As for Alex, I said, leaning in slightly, I've already sent him a friendly message. It included a copy of the DNA test I had expedited. Turns out the baby isn't his either. Her gasp was audible, her face a mask of shock and horror. What? What do you mean? I smirked bitterly. It means you don't even know who the father is. Congratulations, you've managed to ruin not just our marriage, but whatever fantasy you had with him as well. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. For a moment, I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of her betrayal. I'll be moving out of this house with the kids, I said, standing up. You can stay here, but don't get too comfortable. It's only a matter of time before the court decides who really deserves them. Spoiler, it won't be you. A few weeks later, the courtroom was silent as the judge delivered her verdict. Full custody of the children was granted to me, with limited visitation rights for my wife. She tried to plead her case, but the evidence was stacked against her. As we left the courthouse, my kids clung to me, their trust in me unwavering. I'd shielded them from the worst of it, but they weren't naive. They knew their mother's choices had changed everything. That evening, as we sat in our new apartment, my son looked at me and said, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I pulled him close, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "Yes, we are," I said firmly, "because we have each other, and nothing will ever change that." Months turned into years, and life slowly began to heal. My kids grew stronger, their laughter returning little by little, and while the scars of betrayal remained, they became a reminder of what I'd overcome for them. As for my wife, karma continued its relentless work. Alex had left her, and she was left alone to reflect on the choices that had cost her everything. In the end, my revenge wasn't about destruction or anger. It was about taking back control, protecting my kids, and building a life where betrayal had no place. And as I watched my children paint pictures for my office wall, I realized something. I hadn't just survived the storm, I'd rebuilt after it. And that was the greatest revenge of all. Betrayal, no matter how deep or painful, can be an opportunity for strength and self-preservation. This story teaches us that while we can't control the actions of others, we can control how we respond. Loyalty and trust are the foundation of any relationship, and when they are shattered, the aftermath may be painful, but it's never too late to choose a path of dignity and protection for those who matter most. The ultimate revenge isn't about harming others. It's about reclaiming your peace, securing your future, and showing that no one's betrayal can break your spirit. In the end, the greatest victory comes from rising stronger and protecting what truly matters. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so and press the notification bell. This way, you'll stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.